All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Legacy Loading. The man to the right of me does not really need an introduction. 4-time Mr. O, the nicest guy I've ever met in my life. Jay Cutler.
Good to be on, fellas.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming. We're actually we're actually here at Jay's hotel that he's staying at. We came to him because I would do this in a back alley if you asked me.
It almost came to that. We were almost setting up in a back alley.
Yeah, running around trying to find a spot, but we're outside. First outside pod. Harry found a cord. We didn't have power at first, but making it work.
Actually, that's just one of the better settings I've
Honestly.
done a podcast.
I was going to say, that's a really nice frame.
Got some greenery in the background.
Yeah, but yeah, we're here.
So Jay, again, you came to town mostly for the YoungLA event, right?
I did, yeah. We just celebrated our 1 million on Instagram. I think when I actually started conversing with Gary and everyone, it was, I think, like under 200, I think.
Under 200K?
Yeah. So I remember, like, the big deal was 500K, and that seemed like just yesterday, right?
I made that video, I think, the 500K.
It was only like not even a year ago.
It was within the year because I made it, and I haven't been with YoungLA for a year, so that's insane.
It happened so fast, but it's really cool to, I was involved with the Black Friday. I get to see you guys there, and now to have this event we had this past weekend, which was super successful. It's a lot of new faces. I mean, it seems like every week there's a new position on the team, right?
Yeah.
And it's just really good to kind of catch up, and I know it was a huge milestone for the company.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's way bigger. I mean, when I spoke to Gary when I first started our conversations, he was kind of like, I never expected it to be this. So it's just really cool to be part of it, and of course get to see all you guys.
Yeah, of course. How does it feel to be so welcomed and recognized by these other big names like Joe Aesthetics, who we had on yesterday? He's a huge fan of you, and he himself is a fucking superstar.
Yeah, you know what I like about a lot of the people that I've run into in this younger generation is they're so respectful, and they're not afraid to tell me that I did something along the way that influenced them to get into it, or and these people aren't necessarily accolade. We were kind of talking about that. Like, I was a guy that got on stage, and back in my era, like, you had to, in order to get publicity, you had to really do something extraordinary, right? Yeah. And the magazines called you and they wanted to put you on a cover or do a feature on you. Where today, sometimes it's just the most off-the-wall things that people start getting recognized. But they also, they're some introverted people, we talked about this yesterday, that, the stardom is, like, super fast. It's unexpected. But they're so respectful to me on what I achieved, and it's not anything that might be on their bucket list to ever do. Like, I literally spoke to, one of the kids that was 16, and he's like, I'm not really into bodybuilding, I'm more like, I'm more of the aesthetic thing, if you know what that is. Yeah. And I said, of course I know what that is.
That's what he said to you.
And, at 16, but I said, are you like the youngest guy? I mean, the range, I thought, I'm one of the older people that's kind of related to the brand.
Yeah.
And I think just now, like, transitioning from magazines to social media, it's really given me, like, a different perspective on everything. And as much as they might have been excited to meet me, it's like putting a face to the name, and then to actually get to speak to them. It's really really cool.
That's what impresses me the most about what you've accomplished, is just the sustained amount of accomplishments, and the fact that you could talk to someone who was literally born in 2006 and they still have consumed your content. They know who you are back. You were competing way before they were even born.
Well, I won the Olympia in 06, right?
So, like, they're born.
I usually start the conversations like before you were born.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, my parents a lot now, and it's kind of weird because you feel a lot older, right? And but that was recognizable because their parents actually were following me in books. And people don't even know what magazines are these days.
No, and they're texting their parents like, "Oh, I'm talking to Jay Cutler right now."
Yeah, a lot of expos now, they come up and they say, "Oh, can I take a picture for my dad?"
But I'm gonna be honest. I think you are one of the guys that made a really good transition into the new generation type of content and all that. Like, a lot of these old guys, they're still stuck in that old age, and they don't know how to post on Instagram. They don't know how to do YouTube. They don't know how to do all these things. But you made the adjustment pretty easily.
Yeah, I can tell you, like, when I was retiring around, like, actually when I was coming to the end of my career, like 2011, 12, I actually had a 19-year-old assistant, and they did a big documentary on bodybuilding.com that was called Living Large. And he was kind of showcasing, he's the one that introduced me to Instagram. And I said, what is this thing? And he said, you know, you post like your daily, and this is before videos and all that could be posted on Instagram, before stories existed. So I said, what do you do? He's like, you show your life. I said, well, I do that on Facebook. You know, I have almost 7 million on Facebook. But it was crazy because now these platforms started to come about. And then, of course, you know, your Snapchats and TikToks now that have transitioned. But if it wasn't for having younger people around me, I probably would have been stuck like some of the others where I didn't adapt to social media, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, to your credit as well, though, it's one thing to know about it and hear about it. It's another thing to start getting involved with it and actually start using these platforms that you know, when you first started posting on Instagram, you probably had no clue that it'd be where it's at right now. But at least you took that leap and you were like, all right, let's do this thing.
Yeah, and to be honest, I wasn't. You would kind of hard to believe I wasn't a showman like that. So like, as much as some people love to showcase their life on Instagram, like I kind of learned through DVDs. Like I used to have these DVDs I release every year, and it would show my lifestyle and how I ate, how I shopped, how I trained, everything, all my, you know, my cars, and I wasn't even like trying to really showboat stuff then, but I was super successful at the time, and I think that people saw from the transition from the first DVD to the last one, like how bodybuilding gave me such a great life, and you know, all my success I attribute, you know, whether it's business and you know, all the investments that I did along the way was strictly from bodybuilding, basically.
Where were those DVDs being sold back then?
I sold them online. So I had a website. You know, in 2000, I started my website, jcutler.com. And the magazines with the articles that I would post in there, as kind of a trade out, I would option, you know, as part of my contracts, I had endorsement deals with the books.
Yeah.
I would ask for an ad space in there. And right that time, the ad page was $20,000. So like when all these supplement companies were advertising on the magazines, it was $20K a full page. So I would actually negotiate.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so you figure now, I mean, people spend digital marketing dollars, whereas, you know, they did that in the books, and, you know, I would put a address in the back where I'd advertise it, and a lot of people would come to me and purchase through a web order. And I mean, honestly, the first week of DVDs, I mean, I would peak over 200,000 in DVD sales.
It's insane.
Bro, that's crazy.
You're selling DVDs
$40 a piece,
via magazines.
And they were like 7 hours long of just raw, like no fucking editing, no transitions, just straight. It was every set in between sets, right?
It would be me people would comment how I put the weights back onto the weight trees.
Yeah.
And what I did in between sets, how I would drink the water, how I would pose, you know, the clothes that I wore. And, you know, back then, you know, if I had a T-shirt that said Mr. O on it, like I could merchandise that like you do on social media, like organically, and then people would say, oh, I got to do that. I had a J as numero uno like Arnold did. I had a shirt that I sold like that, but I did it all. I mean, I marketed. I had T-shirt line. I mean, I always mention I was selling crazy amount of T-shirts out of my garage. I was shipping them. Yeah. And, you know, before everyone was even selling clothing.
How much were you, if you don't mind, how many units were you packing and selling? How much money were you making just selling merch, T-shirts, man, out of your own place?
I mean, I was selling well over $1 million in T-shirts alone. I mean, the DVDs alone. I mean, in the first week alone, I would literally have every guy friend, their girlfriends, everyone packing and shipping orders out of my house. And I'm not kidding. I would sell $250,000 worth of every drop immediately. $250,000 bucks.
It was also
in DVDs.
very different back then because there was less competition, I would say.
There was.
Everyone has merch now, you know what I'm saying? Everyone has a workout program or this, that. So did you say like you like kind of started that whole like merch wave, or?
I think I did. I mean, I started with one T-shirt and one 8x10 photo, and I would sell that stuff. I mean, I started when it was strictly mail order before the internet came along. So I would actually, you know, have articles in the books, and I'd have a P.O. box at the end, and people would mail me checks. But I would handwrite letters to a lot of the fans before email existed. And then once I was able to start, you know, we had dial-up AOL. It would like, you guys don't even remember this,
I remember that.
And
the noise it makes you.
We're not that young.
You know, it'd make like a noise, you know, when it would dial up. And then, you know, I was able to kind of respond through that, but I would get checks every single week, and people would buy everything from me.
Yeah. So you figured out how to make a very good living without the internet in the form it is today. And like, no matter what like things were available to you, you figured out how to turn that into a business or how to make money that way. Do you feel like people nowadays don't have an excuse because of how many resources are available to them with the internet?
They have a phone, right?
Right.
The phone is, I mean, it's an extension. Everyone is capable of making dollars, no matter what the value. Like anyone that has an Instagram or a YouTube, I tell everyone what I run into, lock your name in. Can you imagine if I didn't lock in Jay Cutler? I mean, obviously there's a football player and everything else, but like we
don't talk about that guy.
Yeah,
You're cool. You're cool, Jay Cutler.
I was able to lock that in early, and it was just, I wasn't the smartest guy, but I was able to take advantage of the situations. And I can't tell you that I didn't have great influences like some of the other bodybuilders that did DVDs, but the merch thing, I mean, kind of Chris Aceto, who trained me a lot of years, he was my coach. He kind of showed me the way to market, and then I launched a book, and I would sell everything, like whatever. I listened to my fan base, and that's pretty much still to what I do today. Being in supplements and clothes and, merchandising that thing, food. And like, I just listen to my audience. I don't listen to the noise on the outside, because you're always going to have people that discredit what you do. But at the same time, if you have that audience base, I mean, you've experienced this now in the last year. I mean, both you guys, I mean, now having people that have, like, we ran into people yesterday and they're like, I'm a fan of both of you guys. I don't always get that with people that I'm with, right?
At Gold's.
Must make you feel pretty good.
Yeah, dude, standing next to you, man. Someone wants to meet me.
Bro. Can you take this picture?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Dude,
I mean, how many businesses do you have a hand in right now? Like, how many different streams of income?
Like you do a million things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so many. Like, I've along the way I've done a ton of business, and I like to really keep my face in the fitness thing. So I promote shows, and I have clothing, and I do supplements, right, in this space. And obviously I have deals where I work with like a YoungLA. I have shares in Trifecta, which is a food delivery. I worked with Fat Grips along the way. I have a belt line that I do, like wrist straps and all that. I had an ammo business I was in for quite a few years. I sold that recently. I'm in cannabis, and I do medical liens, and I mean, it's just never ending what I do. Real estate,
I couldn't keep track of you. That was insane.
And you're doing real estate.
Yeah,
and stuff
so
too,
I moved to Vegas from California. When I was 25, Joe Weider, who was the father of bodybuilding,
of course,
he brought Schwarzenegger over. He did the same thing for me. Basically, moved me from Massachusetts. He begged me for years. I met Joe when I was 22. He told me the first time he met me, he said, the first thing he said, "Who did you shoot with? What magazines?" And I said, "Well, I shot with this and that." He said, "Because I want to sign you." And he said, "You are going to be the best someday." And I remember our first conversation, he didn't even know anything really about me. 22.
Damn.
And he put me on Muscle and Fitness when I was 22 years old. And back then, being on Muscle and Fitness cover magazine, like, you made it. Like, that's like winning the Olympia, right?
Yeah.
So I was 22, and I was landing. So you can imagine going back to Massachusetts, and I grew up in a town of 6,000 people. Like, I was on the cover of Muscle and Fitness, which was in every grocery store aisle around the country, worldwide. They had all printed in all languages. And he moved me to California when I finally went at 25. I moved to Orange County. I was there for 2 years, and I was shooting with the magazines basically year-round. I was one of these guys that stayed in great shape. So I was available to shoot all the time. I was one of the youngest guys in the business. I turned pro at 23. I was on the Olympia stage by the time I was 25. So right after I had placed at that Olympia, which was almost dead last, I moved to California. I was being shot all the time. And I was able to win my first pro show in 2000. I bought my first home in Southern California. And that was my goal, was I didn't want to rent. I wanted to really start establishing. And early on, growing up in concrete, my brothers were in like a lot of real estate business and kind of showed me like the value of $1 early. So as I was progressing and starting to make real money, I eyed Vegas, and 9/11 happened, the tragedy. And I went to Vegas to visit a friend, and everything was marked down in Vegas. And I called my accountant the next day, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about Las Vegas?" He said, "It'd be great for your business because you're really starting to make money, no state income tax." And I moved to Vegas, and I bought like 7 properties the first year.
Holy
I took every
shit.
dollar I made, and honestly, every show that I won, like 02, 3, and 4,
Yeah.
I bought a property with every single show that I won.
All in Vegas.
Back then, you could put down 5%. So I was actually buying properties. I got in with one of the builders, and I was flipping. And I kept some as rentals, and I was able to defer some tax that way. And eventually, I was able to sell off a lot of my rental space, and I moved into commercial property. And I got more into investment funds now, which I still do to this day. So every year I usually do a deal where I invest with a group on different projects. And, that's kind of where I'm at in that sense now.
Damn, so you were almost using your body and these winnings to invest in properties, and just, it was like, win a show, invest, win a show, invest.
Yeah, and you know what the funny thing is? Joe was he taught me this. Like, he told me, listen, bodybuilding's not going to last. And to be honest, I'll be truthful, like, I never thought I was actually going to be as good as I was. So if you look at, like, my first DVD was a cut above, and it's on YouTube. Guys can see it. And I actually said in the video, I don't think I'll ever be Mr. Olympia, which is crazy because, all these successful people say, I'm going to be the best. And if you read anything about me, I always have these quotes. I knew I'd be the best from day one. It's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
I actually
Motivation.
wasn't sure because when I placed second to last at my first Olympia, I was really good. And I'm like, man, I thought I was going to stand next to Ronnie Coleman the first time out. And then I moved up to 8th the next year, and then I got second, and then I never looked back. I was top 2 in the world for 10, 12 years, right? So I had to realize that, hey, this is a temporary thing. So I need to make sure, because my whole goal out of bodybuilding was to be financially stable, where I could enjoy a hobby that I loved, which was working out, and eventually roll into business. And one thing I knew I didn't want to do, and I love this talking to you. So my brothers had a concrete business, and I knew I could always fall back on that. I went to college for criminal justice, got my degree in that. I wanted to be a police officer, but I always had the family business, which they still do. They're super successful, but I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated working doing concrete. And I said, you know what? I don't want to do this the rest of my life. And I looked up to my brothers a lot. I still do, because if it wasn't for them teaching me the work ethic of doing it, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
I was going to say, what's awesome is a lot of people watching this can relate, because a lot of people who watch this relate to my story. And you actually have a similar story where your family's very successful. They have this concrete business, which is a good job. I'm sure they make great money.
They're very wealthy, yes.
But that doesn't matter. You still don't want to do that every day. And that's the thing that separated you. You were like, you know what? This is here. It's a safety blanket. I love my family, but I want to go pursue my thing, And there was nothing wrong with your brothers doing concrete. That's what they want to do, But you were just like, you know what? I have a whole different vision for my life, and that's why it worked out.
But that's, I did that like weekend school vacations after school, and that work ethic really built me
100%.
a base for bodybuilding, because I felt like I could outwork everyone. And, even to this day, I was sitting, we had lunch yesterday, you and I, and you asked me, like, what's the goal in 10 years, right? And I'll be like almost 60 years old in 10 years, and I'm like, I hope I'm still working. Do you remember that comment?
Yep.
Because my dad worked until he was 89. I mean, he retired from one job at 65, but he actually worked harder after 65, not for the money, because he just wanted to stay active. And I feel that as long as I'm active and able to do things, I'm going to continue to do it, right? And my brain feels like fresh when I'm always thinking and kind of conquering new things.
You've been doing this for decades at this point,
forever,
man. It feels like you're never satisfied with what's going on. You're always looking for that next thing. Because when we were talking at lunch, you had all these ideas for different businesses and how you're going to evolve. And like to me, that's just like there's not many people that are just so hungry to be doing this type of thing and for years and years, like always improving.
And it's not all for me. It's not all for selfishly, like, no, listen, I wanted to be the best, but like I want to help other people too. And I never realized that my reach would actually encourage so many people when I was selfishly training for Olympias or trying to be my best, that it would actually give them motivation.
Yeah.
And to this day, like, you don't know how many people come to me and say, you saved my life. And I feel a little weird sometimes because I'm like, how did I do that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I listened to a story and it's like, well, I saw a picture of you, or I read an article, and all of a sudden, like, I changed my eating habits and I was obese. I hear more people now tell me how obese they were than people trying to be the next bodybuilding hero, right?
Yeah.
Which is absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah.
But how is it at these expos now, and when you meet people? Are you numb to it?
I try to listen, and the thing is I have to mentally prep now to do these expos, because when you have a conversation with someone, the eye contact and understanding and listening to everything, that without the noise around you, because you can imagine that everyone's shouting Jay Cutler or trying to get in or whatever, and I try to spend that 1 or 2 or 5 minutes with people that sometimes wait. I had an expo 2 weeks ago in Nashville, and it was a 5-hour wait for me to see people. And I'm like, man, I wouldn't wait 5 minutes for someone, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to spend a little time. And you know how many people came to me and they said, man, we love what you do, because you're not just shaking hands, taking a picture, and just walking away. I listen to their stories, and I ask people, why are you here? What is your goal? Like, what are you trying to do? And that's really, I think, what's prolonged what I've done in this business, and people still recognize who I am, because I truly care about, like, what people are doing at these things and how they're pursuing their lives. And, you know, there's so much uncertainty, and confidence is a huge upside down factor with a lot of people. People look at themselves in the mirror, or what keeps people from being successful is lack of confidence. Because if you want to do something, you just have to do it. And you have to sometimes, like, block out the noise. And I always call it my box, like, because I just live in a box sometimes, and I just go after it. Like, there's nothing that's impossible in my eyes. And you're like, you guys are, look at you, pack up from where you are to pursue something, right? And there's always uncertainty, but you know what? Everyone lives with that uncertainty. And I encourage anyone, especially listening to this or whatever, like, if you really have a dream and a vision, like, there are, you know, there's no ceiling to what that can be.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I think it's incredible that, me personally, how you know this very specific thing about me. Like, your story is great, the construction, because you watch. You know what I'm saying? You're not just this big name who doesn't really keep in, like, you know very specific things about everybody. Like, you watch and you observe. And I think that's special, because
makes an impact.
To me, it's crazy. Like, you come up to me and I'm like, dude, Jay Cutler knows about me. Like, you know my story.
You know, it really caught me off guard. And, you know, I always bring that up, is, you know, you said on that video, like, I promise you, and I don't even know how many followers you had at that point. You said,
like
I promise.
Like 3,000, 4,000.
And you're like, I'm not going to be doing this in 1 year.
Yeah.
And you yesterday told me, like, you know, he DM'd you and said, hey, I want to shoot something.
Yeah,
so, like, you were just a go-getter in that sense, right? Like, you didn't know him.
No, strangers.
And you were like, hey, I'm in here. I want to shoot you, and I'll do it. And you probably did it for free.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure.
Everything was free when I first
So
got
now
to Texas.
look at the success. And, like, I admire, like, it doesn't matter what level. You know, I consider myself a successful guy, but I also look at you guys as a certain success level, and you're so young. There's so much opportunity, and there should be no end goal. Like, you asked me that question yesterday, like, well, where do you see yourself? Dude, I don't know. It's like asking, like, where's Jay Cutler going to be in 10 years? Like, if you told me 10 years ago I would be in this position, I would say, no way. I mean, I never thought that.
Yeah. Like, going back to what you were saying about, like, the uncertainty is, of course, when you take a leap and you go somewhere, you pursue a new career, like, there's the uncertainty of what's going to happen, but there's also that uncertainty of what if you never pursue those things. If you stayed on the East Coast, you didn't listen to Joe, you would have to live with the uncertainty of, well, what would have happened if I did it? So the only way to really know is if you go and try it and you find out for yourself. And if it doesn't work, great. Some other doors would have been opened along the way, but you don't know until you go.
Joe told me months ago, I think he told me at the October shoot, I'm not moving to California.
Yeah.
And now look.
Because I was scared. Not scared, but it was uncertainty. You know, Texas worked out, and I was like, you know what, this is working. Why would I fuck with it? Why would I try to venture off? And you know what, this is working right now. But now I opened my mind a little bit, and I was like, listen, Texas worked because I took the leap. Now LA it's gonna work. I just have to take the leap. And now I'm here, you know.
Part of it also is the people, your corner was we care about you, bro. And so we all tell you this is a good move. Like, we believe in you. We're gonna help you.
Yeah.
You're gonna do great here. Like, so we all have people in our circle and in our group that, like, we all want the best for each other. We want to see everyone succeed, and we wouldn't let Joe just sit around and be comfortable being in a place where he'd make good money. He'd still be growing consistently on social media, but like, we know that the sky's the limit for Joe.
Yeah,
and so
I found myself getting comfortable again in Texas, and that's when I was like, something's got to change, because I seek discomfort, because that's when I thrive. When I do something that I'm scared to do, I try it and it works out. That's when I get in my car and I'm like, fuck yeah. I'm like, that shit worked out. Like, we did it.
Well, it's just like you said, like, you came to LA and you're like, you know, it does make you work harder, because you look around and you're I have to make this work because I have bigger bills to pay. And, you know, you look and you think, you know, you're very super successful. Then you meet one person, you're like, oh, you're nothing. You know, I feel that way. I mean, I come out here from Vegas and, you know, I think I live in a great place and I live a great life. And then I walk around Rodeo Drive last night and, you know, I'm shopping and this and that. And I'm like, damn, there's people really living here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it's been not hard, but the adjustment's been kind of different, because it's, like you said, big fish, small pond. Wait.
Small, like here in LA,
small
fish, big pond.
Big pond, right?
Yeah.
It's like, come here and it's like almost like a restart, you know? It's like, all right, now we got to start where we were and see where we could take it now to the next level, because I did what I could do in Texas, got to a point, and now it's like, all right, what am I got to do to get to the next level? And now, like, being here is, the pressure is there, you know. Gary's right here. Gary lives 10 minutes from me. The warehouse is here. There's that pressure on me now to show them what I could do and bring more value to the company that's already valuable, you know. I love YoungLA, man.
You said, we were talking before we started rolling, that you knew you wanted to be a bodybuilder, or you knew you were going to be a bodybuilder at 16, but you didn't start bodybuilding until you were 18, really?
Yeah, you know, I
16, holy shit.
you know, I started reading books when I was 12. My sister's boyfriend, you know, he was kind of an avid lifter, and he had these old scrap magazines laying around from like the 82 Olympia, and I saw Chris Dickerson, and that's really kind of what inspired me, because at that point, every kid was a fan of, like, superheroes, right? And I had never seen anything like that except on, like, my figurines that I played with as a kid. And being 12, like, you don't have that, like, the knowledge of what goes on, especially being from a super small town. I was the youngest of 7 kids, and I started working the concrete when I was 11, so I kind of had a really good build when I was in high school. I was always the strongest, fastest kid, and you know, doing concrete, like, I was carrying these forms. Like, we set up basements, you know, so a little different from here, because I don't think they really put basements. It's more just slabs.
Yeah.
And, you know, that labor really built my physique. And I toyed with weights a little bit because I played football and I did track in high school. But, you know, I went on a date with my ex-wife, who, you know, she was my girlfriend at the time. And I told her on our first date, like, I'm going to be a bodybuilder and I'm going to join the gym. And I actually ended up doing that on my 18th birthday, which was August 3rd, 1991. I actually saved up $300. I joined a Gold's Gym. It was in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Shout out Worcester.
Yeah, it's another small place. And I started my journey, and I was starting college that fall. So, you know, I just graduated high school. And, you know, you're at this crossroad at 18, and you kind of expected to do a lot, right? I said I was kind of, like, wanted to be in the family business from my whole family, except I was like, you know, I want to try to do something else. So I was going to school during the day, and I would train from 8 to 10 at night. The gym closed at 10, and I would shut the gym down. And, like, what I realized when I got in that gym for the first time, like, I actually felt like I was really good at something.
Yeah.
Because I was good in high school, but it was a team thing, right? And when I started touching the weights, like, I was lost in those 2 hours. And anyone that is into weight training, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you didn't think about the pain or the, like, all the stress, and especially being 18 and the expectations for someone like me, being the youngest of 7 kids who already had successful siblings. I was like, okay, what am I good at? And what do I want to do? And I don't think a lot of people at 18 know exactly what they want to do the rest of their lives, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, right? So all my brothers and sisters kind of worked for themselves. My sister had a restaurant. My brothers did the concrete. So I was like, I don't want to work for someone, even though I was working, like, odd jobs. I did security. I worked at a golf course, like, all through college, because I couldn't do the concrete because it was just the schedule didn't allow. I was weight training, and what I became really good at was growing in the gym and becoming stronger to the point where, you know, at the first time I joined the gym, I was asking people, hey, how do I do this or that? And then 6 months later, everyone's asking me, how are you doing this? Because you put on 50 pounds your first year of training. And I was kind of, you know, coaxed into competing, which I wasn't sure about. And they said, we'll give you a free membership. And at the time, I was a broke college student. I said, sure. And eventually that led to Teenage Nationals. I got linked up with Chris Aceto, who is one of the top nutritionists in our business. And he kind of took me under his wing, and he didn't charge me. He did it for free because he saw the potential, because he wrote me a diet that I stuck on my refrigerator. It was 6 meals a day. And I would eat every 3 hours, and I would eat this, and I would follow it exact order. Like, I wasn't one of these guys that I switched around my food. If it was egg whites and oatmeal for breakfast and then steak and potato for 2, like, I did that order every day for 6 months. He came back and looked at me, and he said, holy shit, this kid's going to be Mr. Olympia. That's how much
6
progress.
months.
Yes, because I was so dedicated. All I did was train and eat and sleep and go to class and work the little jobs I did. And I was just really good at it. So I became a teenage national champion in 93. Branch Warren actually won the overall at that show. We competed against each other as teenagers. You guys know what Branch is.
That's insane.
And, I mean, the rest is kind of history. I mean, from 20 years old, I was, you know, starting getting looked at in the magazines, and people started calling me. And like I said, I met Joe Weider at 22. I did a show in California, qualified for nationals. I won my pro card the first time out. So I literally did 3 contests before I turned pro. 3. And then I won my pro card, and then, of course, got into the pros and did that. But at that point, I signed a contract with Weider for like $50,000 a year. So you can imagine at 22, someone paying you $4,000 a month to basically lift weights, where I had just graduated with a criminal degree, criminal justice, to become a cop, and it was $28,000 starting pay a year. So I was like, okay, do I become a cop for $28K, or do I bodybuild for
and hang
50?
out, lift weights.
And I'm like, I can't believe someone's going to pay me to lift weights like this. And then I got to travel to California when I was 20, and I met Ed Connors, who owned Gold's Gold Gym at the time, and like, you walked in Venice, and it's nothing like you saw yesterday. Like, it was a who's who, like Keanu Reeves and like Tommy Lee Jones and everybody. Magic Johnson was there. Everybody, like everyone, the who's who. And then for bodybuilding, like Flex Wheeler, you know, Chris Cormier, you know, all these guys. And these were guys I looked at in the magazines. And back then, it was really cool because you never thought you'd meet these people. I mean, the Olympia, we didn't even know the results for like months later because we had to wait for the magazines. Unless you had a connect that was there, you never knew like who won the Mr. Olympia till months later.
Crazy.
Because the magazines were months behind, right? So
just word of mouth.
Like when I went to California and I saw that, I said, I have to be here. I have to be here. And if you ask me why I waited so long, I mean, I was kind of finding my way, and I felt like I didn't want to get disheveled from like my vision and bodybuilding, and I was afraid that if I moved to California, like I always thought guys trained harder on the East Coast, and eventually I moved out here, and that I took that work ethic, and I truly believe East Coast trains harder than West Coast, honestly.
We're East Coast
and then, you know, I was able to just conquer all, and you know, once I moved, I always say I left Massachusetts. And you know, the winters and the rain and everything else.
There's actual seasons.
I actually woke up in California with a smile on my face every morning because it was like this,
like,
you know?
Yeah,
that's why another reason we're sitting out here. Like,
Can't do this in New York.
I was so envious of the California when I was living on
of course.
East
What did your
Coast.
family think?
You know, in the beginning, they were kind of like, wow, you know, is this like the common question, do you make money at this? Like, I used to have people... You know, I was making a few $1,000,000 a year, and people would stop me and say, "Oh, you're huge. What do you do?" And I said, "I'm pro bodybuilding." Like, you make money at that? I'm like, "Yeah, you can make $50, you know." And you know, they were kind of in the beginning like, "You sure this is something you can spend all this time doing?" And the food was like ridiculous. I mean,
expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I used to.
Well, you eat a shit ton of food.
Well, I mean, I always said, you know, I always have these things. I used to buy a cow at a time from like a butcher, and I'd like walk in, and
Yeah.
I'd buy 140 pounds of chicken at a time. I used to go to this farm
Are you
stand.
serious? 140 pounds?
Yeah, I used to go to this farm stand and buy 30 dozen eggs at a time. So I would buy those big boxes you see in restaurants. And I actually worked as a cook at one point. But it was a huge crate, and I'd put this all in my – I'd have – my friends would come over, like when I was 21, I mentioned, and they'd all be partying and want me to come out and whatever. And actually, they go to my refrigerator to look for something to drink, and it would like open up, and they're like, "Damn, the whole thing's full of eggs," you know? Because I'd eat like 30 egg whites for breakfast every day.
And you'd use whole eggs, but would just use the
I
egg
would
white
flip,
part of
yes,
it?
because there was no pasteurized eggs at the
Right.
time. Now you can buy the cartons,
just the cartons,
or you know, Egg Whites International sends me
bro.
stuff, so it
since-
was a lot more harder.
was
Like
gonna
there
say-
was no meal prep, like you know, meal prep exists now. Like there was no such
Trifecta.
thing. Yeah,
Sorry, trifecta.
yeah.
I was gonna say, like now that the bodybuilding is over, obviously you're still training every day. You're still
Doing the
f-
Fit for 50 right
Yeah,
now.
I know you're on the grind right now. Is the food consumption still the same in terms of volume? The same amount of meals?
I eat about half as much as I used to eat. So where I used to eat almost a pound of meat every meal, I eat about 8 ounces of meat, and then I have like I used to eat 1,000 grams of carbs a day. I eat probably around 400.
1,000 carbs is crazy.
Is 400 a lot of carbs? Like you just did a show.
Yeah, it's a decent amount. Like when you start getting ready for the show, you're
Did you
dropping
cut
on-
down a lot?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was definitely sub 2,000 calories before show, so maybe like 17 to 18.
And you weighed what?
185 on
Yeah,
stage.
see, think about this. I was
You were like
almost 300,
285.
and I competed. I won my first Olympia at 273.
You
At
were
5'9".
on 273 on
On
stage.
stage.
Just to
yeah.
maintain that is crazy.
Yeah, it was 7 meals a day, and it would take me, no lie, about an hour each meal to eat. So I would honestly sit in front of a plate for 7 hours a day just to eat that food. That's how much, because I didn't eat for hunger ever.
Right.
I always ate by the clock, but I was very determined and I was very dedicated to eating. And you know, that's, if you ask me the most difficult part about bodybuilding, it's the diet.
Yeah.
Because number one, you have to learn how to adjust to eat clean all the time, but at the same time taking the right macros at the right times depending on how you train, and everyone's different. So it's really hard for these people that try to get on a workout program to follow an exclusive, like everyone's different, right?
Yeah.
So like certain foods, like I wasn't a high fat eater, so I didn't have like avocado or almond butter or anything like that. I mostly tried to eat low fat and protein and carbs.
Yeah. Do you think that discipline that you had to have carried over to all other aspects of your life? So what you had to do to be as successful as you were in bodybuilding, like that mentality and that discipline, you carried that over to other parts of your
Of course,
life.
I mean, but the problem is I'm like, maybe I'm a little over determined to do what I do. So like I mentioned, like I don't take vacations or anything do that thing, which people would say that's kind of strange, right? I mean,
It's up to you,
I just
I
get
guess.
bored super easy.
Yeah.
If I'm not really busy, I tend to get bored. And when I find time, like some people like meditate or they read books or whatever, like I tend to work out or extend my workouts.
I think you're living your dream, so it's kind of, you don't really need a vacation from this life. You're doing everything you love.
I am truly living the dream. I mean, it's still to this day, like I still feel like my task is not done, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
And I feel like a lot of people look at my success as like, hey, you know, you've done so much, but once again, I didn't expect to get to that level, and I don't sit and look in the mirror every day and say, you know, talk to myself and say how successful I am.
Yeah.
I would
Feels
win
normal.
Olympias, guys, and just I would sit at dinner after, you know, everyone telling me how great I was and say, okay, how can I improve to win again next year? And they're like, dude, you just won. I mean, 09, the quad stomp year, right? I mean, I wiped the floor pretty much with all the, you know, the competition. And I'm still like,
Still wanna
okay,
get
I need
better.
to win in 2010.
Yeah.
How can I do
Yeah.
it?
That's that proud but never satisfied mentality. Like that's what everyone has. I feel like, especially the guys that we're around.
At the
It's
highest
just like
level.
we're never. Yeah, like look at Christian Guzman. Like he's got everything. He's outflanned, and he still wants to make more gyms. He still wants to do this and start another clothing brand. And it's just a mentality that I feel like is instilled in a lot of the guys that we're around, and that's why they're so successful.
Yeah, I feel a lot of people, like, they build these empires, and then, like, any one of my friends that are super successful and sold companies for hundreds of millions, right?
Yeah.
And on the outside, we say, oh, he sold that for 500 million or 400 million, and they think that's the end game, right? You just sit on the beach or you golf every day or whatever. But those people last 6 months of downtime, and then they're like, okay, I need to do something.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be devastating to people, because if you have such great success in building crazy business, you think that, this just carries over. I can do this 10 times over, which not is always not the truth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but I see someone that's Christian, like you just mentioned. I mean, I know Christian, and I don't see. I think he's the same way I am, where he's like, hey, I don't want to stop.
Yeah.
And he's not I mean, he's 30 years old, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I'm 49, and I can tell you that people ask me now, what are you going to do in your 50s? I said, I hope I'm busier than I am now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think when you're on this sort of life path and trajectory, you kind of pass these milestones and accomplishments without really thinking about them. Mm-hmm. Similar to how you just said, when you won the O, you weren't reveling in that moment. You're sort of just like, okay, what next? Can you identify maybe 2 or 3 things in your life where they were milestones, where you're like, maybe the first time you got in a fitness magazine, maybe when your picture was hung in Gold's Venice, like some milestone events where you actually could step back and be like, damn, I can't believe I did that.
It's if you ask me the greatest moment that, like, in my memory, it wouldn't be winning the Olympia. It was actually landing that Muscle and Fitness cover when I was 22, because I was like, wow, I made it. Mm-hmm. If I never did anything past that point, I'd probably still be talking about it right now, like back in Massachusetts, like doing concrete, being like, I was on the cover of Muscle and Fitness when I was 22, obviously winning the Olympia was another huge milestone. Coming back to win it after losing it, which has never been done, and I was told that would never happen. That was a huge milestone for me. The last Olympia in 2013, when I finished 6th, which was the worst placing I had in 12 years, that was a huge milestone for me, because I was like, knew at that point, this is it. Yeah. This is the last time I'm going to have to diet. I'm going to walk on stage, perform, and I'm never going to go in competitive mode again. Here I am doing this whole 50 challenge thing for the next 11 weeks, but it's nothing like that where, I'm contracted and I'm expected, and like there's no expectation. So I'm kind of doing this for fun. When I started my nutrition brand, that was another like milestone for me, and there's a lot of things, that I've done in my life that I feel like, okay, this is like a high points. Yeah. And then obviously low points. You would figure me losing the Olympia would be like a low point, but probably, I tore my bicep in 2011 as I was about 3 weeks out from the Olympia, and Phil Heath ended up winning that contest and beat me in that show. And, that was a down point. I had a big deal with one of the supplement companies, Muscle Tech at the time, and I was coming to the end of that deal, and we couldn't come to terms. That was kind of like an oh shoot point in my life. I had been with them for 8 years. I was the highest paid, and I was transitioning, realizing, okay, your career is coming to an end. If you can't negotiate and get a better deal, it's really hard for you to think that this is going to keep going on. And then I started my company, which was a scary moment for me, because I was uncertain how it was going to do. Right. But you know what? In the end, I'm still really just satisfied with, every day as I wake up and challenging myself to new goals.
Yeah. I like to look at some hardships also as milestones in my life. Like some of my worst things that happened to me needed to happen because it got me to where I'm at. Do you have any hard times that you remember that, well, obviously losing the Olympia, like you said, but anything like personally that you remember that kind of shaped you into the man you are today, or the businessman you are today?
You have friendships that come and go, right? I went through a divorce too with, like I said, I was with my ex for 24 years. We were married for 14, and we did a lot of things together. And that's, sometimes you look at those moments as is that a failure moment, or is that is that just life that just transitions, right? And what we learned is, being friends today, it was just a changing point for both of us. We had different perspective on what we expected the rest of our lives, right? Yeah. But, I feel like I sacrificed a lot of friendships and not attending family events. I lost my dad 2 years ago. He was 92. He went to all my Olympias, and I did travel back to see him often, but he told me something that, kind of, it still hasn't resurrected with me, but he said, you have to enjoy your life. I taught you work was number one, and I don't feel like that's honestly what should be number one in your life. I think you get to a certain point where you have to enjoy things. But I truly, like, every day I enjoy things. It's not like I don't enjoy what I do when I am working. Think about my job. I mean, we talk about traveling to these events. I travel worldwide, and coming out here, like, is this work? I mean,
right.
Yeah.
And we talk about that all the
We
time.
always
Like,
say that.
it's work and you are getting paid for a service, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like right, you get flown out somewhere to go to an event, like you get to be around the people that you've inspired, you get to meet new cool people all the time. Yeah, like, yes, you're getting paid for it, but yeah, like, you are enjoying it the whole time.
I just asked you, like, what's going on this week? And you're like, well, I'm just kind of resetting today because I think I have a shoot tomorrow. But it's not like, I got to go to work, right?
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
You're not
I
putting
can't
on
wait.
a hard hat and just clocking, right?
But that's the importance, I think. Like, even you, how you said you worked concrete, and it gave you that worth ethic, that discipline. I'm grateful as hell that I did my 9 to 5. I had that fucking construction job because it shaped me into this person that I wake up and I love going to work.
Because you know what it's like to have something shit.
I know what it's like to dig holes all day and carry pipes and.
Right.
You tell me I got to go shoot in the desert for 8 hours. Oh, it's hot. Fuck that. Like, I'm living my dream.
Well,
like, that's
what I
do.
like, and we'll get back to the question in a second, but, like, you vlog. So you're showing, like, the life of Joe, right?
Yep.
Like, alongside of that work, and you have, you built your own social. You're selling shirts, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Like, that's really cool that you're doing that. So you're using that also as your own platform because now you're being recognized. You go out and people are like, can I take a picture with you? And it's probably strange, right?
It's very weird.
Yeah.
And, but if you ask me the low points, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a positive person, but, like, there's nothing that's been life-altering other, like I said, than, tearing my bicep was definitely a really low point. And, I got divorced. My dog died, and I lost my contract, and I lost the Olympia all in, like, a month. And people would think, oh, that was a really low point for you. But to be honest, like, I was pretty positive about it, truthfully. Like, I was like, hey, I got to keep trucking.
Yeah.
I was not a poor me moment. I just was like,
Sorry about that, guys.
just
We're outside.
wild girls out here.
They just saw
cheering us
Cutler.
on. They're cheering us on.
They're talking about my low points, and of course they're screaming, cheering it on.
Well, do you think that life tests you like that, though? Like, they throw shit at you to see what you're going to do?
And listen, it hits people a different way. I mean, we were talking about an acquaintance who seems to just have a lot of bad luck, right? And it seems like it just can't get a break, right? So everyone has obstacles, and I believe that those obstacles in life make you a better person.
100%.
And you need to have some disruption so you stay, like, motivated and don't get too comfortable in your zone.
Right.
It's just like when we started this podcast. Like, I hope the message comes across. Like, just do it. Just don't make excuses. You made excuses. I made excuses why I didn't move to California right away. I should have done it. You probably made excuses. We didn't even talk about, like, how long it took you to move out. But, like, you know what? And I think we even talked about financial. You're like, I got to be in a little better space. And I didn't even ask about your finances. But, I mean, I'm sure you're in a better position than you were in October.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're more motivated. And I think your brand, you feel, is like, hey, I have something more to give. And, everything is transitional, right?
Yeah. It comes back to your point about believing in yourself and having that supreme confidence, because you don't have to have the answers when you go and make these leaps, but just know that you will figure it out along the way. Like, that to me is been the biggest thing. When we moved to Houston, we didn't know that we were going to be successful, but we knew and we believed in ourselves and what we could do, and that's what matters.
I did too, and when I got on Olympias, you can imagine, like, when you're competing in the number one contest in the world and you're having, you're hyped as, like, okay, you're the top guy, right? Yeah. I was top 2 in the world. So every year we went back, it was expectations of more and more, right? But when I got backstage, I used to take my clothes off in the mirror and be like, oh, shit, I hope I still look good. That's how I really was. And then when I stood on stage and I was scared, I was so scared to lose position. I held the confidence, and you read the articles. I'm like, oh, I knew I'd win, or, but truthfully, I was scared.
Yeah.
I was scared, man, because I'm like, I used to pray and say, please let me land this right, because you never know. There's so many. It's like when you wake up on show day,
Could be
and
a
you're
little watery.
like, man, like you just pray that as you pattern down, like that day you have to peak.
Yeah.
And remember, my whole year depended on that. That was the only show I was doing. So if I missed
On one day, the whole year. Down to
the
one
whole
day.
year is like, oh, now I got to live with that.
Yeah.
So like when I lost in 08, or when I lost the title, and then it was like, oh, he'll never win it back. No one in history ever has. Like that was a really hard time for me, because I'm like, damn, am I going to get this opportunity again? Like when you get that high, like it's hard to go back down.
Yeah.
That's why like I would never compete again, because I knew what that peak was, and I knew what that physique, like looking in the mirror, and I used to pose, and
Can't
and I
sustain
was
that.
blown away.
Yeah.
Like I remember looking in the mirror and waking up on show day and like looking at myself and being like, I can't believe I look like this.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
What was the
Yeah.
year that you trained the hardest? Do you remember?
Probably for the comeback.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like you
after I
lost it. And you
lost.
were
Something
like,
to prove.
I worked with Hani Rambod for the comeback. I switched coaches, which, was a little disruptive, because I was so close with Chris Aceto, and, Hani kind of came on not necessarily as like, I never reached out to him and be like, hey, I'm going to hire you to do this. We kind of just, I don't know how I can explain it, but it kind of graduated to that, because he was there as a friend for me when everyone was kind of against me.
Yeah.
And he pushed me, and he never told me I looked good, and that's what I think was the key, because I said, am I going to win? And he goes, we'll see. And he was training Phil Heath at the time, and Phil Heath was coming up, right?
Yeah.
So I was scared, like, man, am I ever going to get this back? But I trained every day, and I pushed myself, and one thing about me, I was super motivated, and I was very particular about the food and training and all that, but it was having the vision of me standing on stage and being against someone that wasn't Ronnie Coleman. That was where the issue was. Like, I don't really speak about this on the podcast because people don't ask me, but why I lost, I feel, is because Ronnie retired in 07. So in 08, I was kind of like, okay, I battled him being massive.
Right.
And when I came back in 09, I just bragged to you how I was over 270 for my first victory. I was 254 for 09 quad stomp year, which was almost 20 pounds lighter, but it just was a better look for me.
Yeah.
And I was against the monsters, right?
Right.
I mean, I was against Dexter Jackson and
More
Phil.
aesthetic.
And
Yeah.
so with me as a big, bulky bodybuilder, I call myself, I wasn't aesthetic. I was just a freak factor.
Right.
That's what I really had to overcome and figure out, okay, what's the balance to try to compete with the best and have that mindset.
Yeah.
But remember, that's crazy because, I can always think back, well, I was 273 when I won my first. Why do I have to be 254?
You
have to adapt.
Got to. Yeah.
And you have to listen to better eyes than sometimes what the mirror is telling you. And that's one thing. I took notes from everyone that wasn't even better than me, and I tried to put, and I feel that way with business too.
I was going to say the same
and that's
thing.
why I'm so respectful to people that are, listen, I'm expected to be on this level at my age, right? But there's guys that are going to be wildly more successful than me. I mean, look at C-Bomb, right? I mean, he's already got the social media. Like, I had magazine exposure. I think if I was in that era,
Yeah, I was going to say it's a different time.
I could have had a great, but why is he so head and shoulders above everyone else? And if you ask him, he'll say, I don't know.
He said,
100%.
Right? So for me, it's kind of like I'm in that I don't know either why I became so popular, because people just wanted to watch me eat chicken breasts and shop at
7 hours
Costco and
on
say
a DVD.
and say it was the
Yeah.
the craziest things. Like my Costco shopping video is like the most viewed on YouTube, because people want to see how that relates to, okay, what did Jay get at Costco? Because I shop at Costco.
I think a big part of it is that exactly.
Yeah,
it's
you
the
pioneered that
relatability.
shit.
It's like if you're just with a camcorder following you around the grocery store, everyone can relate to that. They're like, I
I do
could
that
walk
too.
right
Yeah.
past I could walk right past Jay right now.
I'm going to go to that same store, buy the same exact checkout, and I'm going to look like Jay Cutler.
And that's the thing, and that's why that's why that's so successful, because you're not like this untouchable god of Mr. Olympia. You're literally just your dude named Jay shopping for chicken in the store.
It's the look that brings people in, right? Your body brings them in, but then they see like his personality. He's a stand-up guy. He goes to the same Costco as me. He does this, that, and that's what separates like you and C-Bum in my eyes. People can relate to you guys.
Yeah,
you know,
we're just normal
regular
people
dudes.
that like, and you know, the confidence was probably questions at times, and you know, but in the end, we selfishly like get people confidence and get people like motivated, and because hey, you know, getting on stage and competing, like it's, you know, it's a big, you have to have a confidence boost to do that, right? It's nervous, right?
Yeah. But that's what's so great about what you do is like, it is bodybuilding is arguably one of the most selfish sports in the world, right? However, the amount of people that you are impacting on that journey of like personal perfection is astounding. Like the amount of millions and millions of people that you've transformed their bodies and their lives, it's like unconsciously. You're not trying to do that. You're just doing what you love. You're documenting it, and everyone's taking and learning from that.
Yeah, and listen, this is worldwide, right? I mean, I traveled to every single culture there was, and when I thought I was popular, I went to some of these foreign places, and you guys wouldn't believe it.
I know you're big in India, right?
Everywhere. I've been to Japan, and I traveled to Middle
People
East.
recognize you in the street.
Yeah, man, it's just, you know, you come off the plane and people have signs, like, you know, it's not like rock star thing.
It's that like superhero complex.
Like they wait at the airport, and I'm like, how do these people know what my flight was, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's when you're like really like, wow, kind of blown away. And still to this day, I feel that way, because there's some places I still haven't gone, and I'm still booking to go places. And, you know, to
Where
be
do you
honest,
want to go?
Well, my bucket list is Thailand. And I was telling Joe that because I know he lives there, and
he loves it.
It's just the flight is so long.
Yeah. Other side of the world.
So I have to find like, okay, there needs to be some sort of business or something that I could kind of have an excuse other than just because if you ask me, I just said I don't go on vacation. So if you said, well, I'll go to Thailand for 2 weeks and I can't. I'll go crazy.
You got to have business there.
And people, they think I'm nuts for this, but I just...
No, I get it. You need purpose.
I can't sit around and do... Yeah. I can't sit at a pool and have a drink or kick back. Like, you know, I try to stay out of the sun, honestly, so I'm not like a sun guy. Like, I wear sunblock every day, and like it's just not my thing. I mean, I live in Vegas, so you can imagine the sun's like crazy there, but like it's all business pretty much.
Yeah. We are at 3:10.
Okay.
So
what we usually do is we go on Instagram Live, and we allow our followers to join and request to join the FaceTime, and then we allow them to ask us a question.
And then we wrap it up.
Okay.
Jay's got a flight to catch. Don't want to hold him up.
What was like the first event that you remember being flown out for, paid appearance, and what was that like?
Hawaii was my first guest posing, and I flew from Massachusetts, so it was like 14 hours, and I got paid $500 to do it, and a flight.
Yeah.
And I thought I was like, man, that was unbelievable.
No hotel or anything?
No, hotel.
Okay.
But I'm like, oh, trip to Hawaii, but you know, I didn't take a female with me. I was 21, so I didn't take my girlfriend.
21 in Hawaii.
But I went. You know who I guest posed with? I guest posed with Dorian Yates.
Okay.
Former Mr. Olympia, and Mike Matarazzo, who is no longer with us, but he was a total freak.
At the same guest post.
Yeah, they were there. The guest posing with me, so it's pretty cool.
Was Dorian?
He didn't really say much to me though.
I was
like,
I
wanted to ask him questions, but he kind of was like a little standoffish, to be honest about it.
Interesting.
You know?
Had you met him? How many other times have you met him?
I met him a million times after that, but it was crazy because I wanted to ask him a million questions, but what was I going to ask him? Hey, what do you eat? Like, how do you train? You know, I watched him train, so it was kind of cool to see.
He should have asked you, man.
You know, but I wasn't. You know, I was big, but
Dorian was one of the first mass monsters to ever step on stage.
I mean, this was '95, so he had won the Olympia for the first time in '92. So he was already on his third Olympia.
Was he one of the guys you looked at?
Yeah,
and was like, I
looked at him,
that.
but I honestly looked at Sylvester Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme as like my bodybuilding idols because they had good physiques.
Have you met Sylvester?
Yeah,
Stallone?
I met both. Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah.
Was that a crazy
Van Damme
experience?
trains at Gold's, you know.
Oh yeah.
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 Stallone came out of his limo and actually said to me, like, I'm a huge fan, which was
No
wild
way.
to me. Yeah. So I watched Rocky IV. That came out when I was 12. And I was a Rocky fan, not an Ivan Drago fan. I got to meet, Dolph also, but
You're like,
man, I wanted to be Rocky,
Hell yeah, man.
Would you say he's
so
the
cool.
first person you met that you were like starstruck back in the day?
Um,
Who was someone you really wanted to meet? Like not even bodybuilder.
I
just back in
mean,
the
recently
day.
I met Marcus Allen, who
Yeah.
was an amazing football player. Like, I was pretty floored to meet him because I followed him when I was a kid. Yeah, Van Damme was probably because I watched Bloodsport and I met him at Gold's. It's actually one of my YouTube videos, and
Sick.
like I literally said I didn't want to bother him, and his buddy was with him that knew me, and it's like, oh man, and someone said like that was with me. It's like, oh, that's Jay's, like that's why he started bodybuilding. So he actually left, and he came back because he's like, oh my God, Jay, I didn't see you, and whatever. But it was funny because the first time I met him was actually in the Gold's parking lot, and I was walking in the gym, and there was this guy yelling across the parking lot. He's like, Jay, and I realized as he was getting closer, it was Van Damme. And I was like, in my head, like, oh shit, this is, what do I say? And I was a successful bodybuilder at the time. And like, he stuck his hand out and he says, I'm a huge fan. So when you can imagine, same thing when Stallone, like someone called me over, like, hey, someone wants to say hello to you. I just won my last Arnold, the Arnold I won in 04. And I was walking in Morton Steakhouse in Ohio, and there was a limo parked outside, and this guy came to get me that I knew, Vince, and then he's like, hey, someone wants to meet you, and then the door opens, and Sylvester, like, steps out, and he's like, hey, I'm a huge fan, and he invited me. He had a show called The Contender in Vegas. It was like a boxing event, and he invited me to come there, and we became kind of friendly at that point. So it was really cool to kind of put your idol on, like, this platform, and they really followed through with why, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool,
That's
man.
insane.
And you're like 300 pounds at the time.
Yeah, I was
freaky,
obviously super successful in my field, but
yeah.
like, I learned more about Stallone and him writing the Rocky films and what he's done, and I mean, he still looks tremendous for his age in his 70s, and I mean, he was friends with Arnold, and Arnold was a huge pusher for me too. I mean, I saw Terminator 2 when I was in high school. And that was a huge inspiration for me. Like, I thought Arnold was huge in that movie. Now looking back, I'm like, oh, he wasn't even that big.
He was off cycle.
I used to think Commando, he was crazy, right? I thought in Twins, I remember his calves in Twins. You remember Twins, that movie with
No one
Danny
looked like
DeVito?
that back then.
No.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, what he did was just crazy. And I mean, obviously I do, have business relationship with Arnold, and it's wild now to kind of mix like elbows with these people.
Yeah, like there's nobody that you can't really connect with on that level at this point.
Yeah, it amazes me sometimes because once again, I'm that kid from 6,000 people town, Sterling, Mass, and that no one really ever leaves, which isn't such a bad thing. I envy my brothers because they don't have to get on planes and do a lot. They're very simple life, right?
Yeah.
Where sometimes I feel like our lives are really complicated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, feeling like you have to share everything you're
man.
doing. Like I'm going here, I have to let my social media know that I'm in this place, or I have to, it's that pressure every day.
I
keep
came
posting.
back after the party the other night, and I was like, damn, like I should have got more on Instagram.
I said the same thing.
Because I have one of the bigger followings, right? And I feel like I'm on like, man, I should have brought someone, had someone film like a little bit more and get some. And I mean, I'm hoping that they took a lot of pictures because I would like to get those sent to me, like of me. But I felt like I didn't post enough. Does that you guys ever feel like
all
that
the
at
time,
events?
Of course.
All the time. But the unfortunate thing is like that just means that you were so present in the moment that you weren't thinking about that, and that needs to be a good thing. You need to be able to go and do events and things and not feel like you have to be filming, and you can't feel guilty about it in post because like it just means that you were there and it wasn't.
No, I know, and the thing is when I walked in the room and anyone that made eye contact with me, I tried to go over and shake hands, and I have no idea who some of these people are, right? I mean, I asked straight up. I'm like, hey, so what do you do? And like, what's, obviously you're part of the brand or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I try to engage with everyone that made eye contact with me because I know that could be a changing point for people, right? To be recognized. Because I feel like some of those people could tell, like, man, I'm in the room with all these people, and I know, like, when they sent out the thing like, hey, be courteous of people's time. This isn't like a picture moment necessarily, but I was welcoming that. Does that make sense? It's like the gym yesterday, right? I mean, we were training and people are coming up left and right. Like, hey, can I take a picture?
Not a moment of silence. Yeah.
I kind of beat myself up a little bit on the way home. I was like, damn, I should have talked to more people. You know, I was like walking by people, not saying anything. I should have said hi to every single person at that party because we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
You know, but I kind of was just in this, I'm going to the bathroom, like, excuse me, like, instead of like, hold on, what's your name? You know, like, who are you and what do you do? And it's just, it's tough because you're in the moment, but you're also, I was like capturing content and I feel like I didn't talk to certain people, but you can't do everything, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that pressure that we put on ourselves is the reason why we do what we do.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just
so
respect
hopefully,
people, you know?
hopefully, like some of the team members and are watching this, and they, like, hey, let's make it a point. You know, next time we see each other,
of course,
we for sure, you know, try to say at least a hello. Welcome. I welcome any picture or tell me your story or whatever. I'll share any experience because, or if I'm coming locally to any place that you're at, please take the time to come see me and say hello and recognize, you know, just make sure you tell me. That's all.
That's
not working.
Yeah. Oh, it's not. That's a really good point.
Service.
That it's a good kind of ending point. Is like you are. I'm not just saying this, but you are so much a man of the people, and you do really. You don't care if they're a superstar or they're just starting out. You want to make a difference and make an impact.
Doing this podcast.
Yeah, like this.
No, I told you. I actually invited myself on this.
No, yeah, you kind of did. But we seriously, like, this is surreal. You know what I'm saying? This is for us. It's everything.
Is the Wi-Fi not working?
Yeah, the service is really bad.
Well, let's log in because it's free.
The Wi-Fi.
Anything.
It won't let you. Maybe I'll do it on my, or just go on.
Try it. Can you go on yours?
I'm gonna try. Live. You don't have this option right now?
No, I do. It's just not loading.
All right, let me try. Oh yeah, same thing.
Yeah, service.
Well, we can just make up.
I think we should say a generic question that someone probably would have asked. I want your best advice because we have a pretty young audience, you know, like young and hungry.
Or business.
No, fuck just life. And you're young and you want change. They want their home working at their concrete company with their family. Like, they want to get out. Like, what is your advice?
18-year-old kid.
Yeah. 18-year-old, yeah.
You know, there's going to be a lot of life in front, right? And I know that, like I said, at my turning point, the expectations are so much. You know, your label is as an adult once you turn 18, and I don't feel like you're a full adult until you've gone out on your own, you've moved out, and you've ventured out and do things. And listen, a lot of times families are super close, and you know, people live with their parents until they're 25 or never leave, right?
Yeah.
But I encourage everyone to be an entrepreneur. Like, I think that everyone, you know, we need people working in, obviously, the workspace. But at the same time, like, never be satisfied with one stream of income. So diversify, because you want to be as resistant as you can to economy crisis or change of, like, we talk about, like, the induction of, like, artificial intelligence now, which seems to be, like, taking over. And obviously that's going to, like, jobs are going to become less and less, right? I mean, for example, like McDonald's, right? Like, people working at McDonald's, like, that wasn't looked upon as, like, something, they pay actually really well, but now you're seeing kiosks now at McDonald's. So eventually you're going to basically put your orders and someone's going to hand you, and that's it. No one's going to be taking orders. So I think that diversifying yourself and trying to be, you know, active in different fields, not just picking one sole thing. Try to be good at a few things if you can, or have interest in a few things, have an open mind to that. So pay attention to what your friends are doing. I mean, if I asked you guys, like, you know, you do photography, you learned video, like, they're two different things, right? You're doing this podcast, right? It's networking. Networking is my number one success in what I've done. If you ask me what is the secret to success, it's networking. And I hate throwing, it's like your network is your net worth. You've heard that term, right? And they say surround yourself with successful people. Listen, I have people that I'm surrounded by that aren't super successful, and maybe I motivate these people, and then I have people that are super successful. But you have to network. So you have to come out of your house. You have to do things. You have to put yourself out even at some things you don't want to do, because you never know those relationships. I can promise you, through all the years, I've always kept great relationships, and that's what's made me successful.
100%.
And Jay's self-admittedly is an introvert. Like, this isn't easy for him
Yes.
to go out and do these things, but he knows the value of that. So even if you're introverted, that's not an excuse not to get outside your comfort zone and meet people and be in uncomfortable situations.
That was gems. We always do end the pod with the same question, which is kind of crazy saying it to you, but because you are a living legend and you already built a legacy. But what does leaving a legacy mean to you, and what do you want your legacy to be?
You know, I always want to be motivating to people. I always want to be positive to people. I don't want anyone to ever have anything that, wow, you know, I don't like that about Jay, right? Do I feel I was the greatest bodybuilder ever? I feel I am in a way, and that may sound a little arrogant, because I think if you look at all around, like, I walked away super healthy, like, I can still train at full capacity. I feel like financially I did really well. I feel I networked as good as anyone could. I always had great relationships with all the endorsements I did. In fact, you know, migrating now to, you know, ownership and whatever else with brands. Still to this day, I'm still getting offers all over the place. I mean, look at, I'm working with a younger demographic, like with YoungLA, for example, and you know, I'm making myself available because I want people to learn from the process. So legacy is about learning. Legacy is about, you know, there's no one that's better than anyone else. We just have different style on how we do it.
Yeah.
Right? So I can throw, you know, Phil Heath's name out there. He did it his way. Dorian Yates did it that way. Ronnie Coleman did it. You know, we know Ronnie is like the hard trainer, right? But all around, I feel like I've given everything to my passion, and that was bodybuilding, because still to this day, there's one space that I'm most comfortable in, and that is in my workout. Like, it is my meditation. It's my drug, is my workout. Like, if I don't work out, I go crazy. So I'd rather, instead of drinking or smoking or doing whatever things that might be a little negative, I find the workouts are great. So legacy is a combination of just being happy and being successful, but also doing something that's positive and respected by your peers or people that learn about you through all the networks, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I think the first point that you made, everyone that's ever met you that we've spoken about has only positive things to say. And I think that is, to me, one of the things that legacy is as well. Is like, anyone that's talking about you when you're not there, what do they have to say? And I can say that everyone has said nothing but the most positive things.
I just try to treat everyone great, and that's one thing I have to give a shout out to Gary and his brother at YoungLA, because they brought us together, right? And that's why I love those guys so much, because they've given me an opportunity to expand and develop new friendships and around people that treat each other well, right? And I feel there's a lot of positivity. Like, I really like the vibe about that. And I think that's really important, because we get so many people that discredit others today, and we need people to be positive. And I feel like we have a lot of that around us, so I'm very thankful for that. And I'm really thankful we had the opportunity, you know, and to get to know each other more, and you know, and shout out to everyone out there that follows this, and I hope this becomes like a super successful podcast that people are like calling you more than I was calling you to say, hey, I want to be on it.
Thank you, man.
Really appreciate that. I know we know you got a flight to catch, but we just want to say thank you so much for coming on, inviting yourself on. Of course, he invited himself on.
I just wanted to sit next to Joe and, you know, be able to compare my arms a little bit.
Should have wore a hoodie.
But
I like Joe. He looked really cool on the pod. You know, he had the glasses on yesterday and all that. Yeah.
We're gonna go grab him right now. Actually, follow Jay on Facebook,
Instagram, Jay Cutler.
Snapchat.
Just look at Jay Cutler.
Everything.
Pick up the DVDs. If
Go
they're
get
still out
no
there.
more no DVDs. I still sell the DVDs, but no, you can go on. I downloaded all those for free on YouTube. Go to Jay Cutler TV. That's my YouTube channel. or Cutler Cast. You can see a lot
he
of
has his own
content.
podcast too.
Yeah.
If you guys are, because your podcast listeners, he has his own podcast. Go check it out.
Yeah, cool.
All right, Jay.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much,
you coming
Jay.
on.
Appreciate you guys.
See you guys in episode 53.
Three. That's the next one. All right.
Peace.